So now we are in the 8th part of the Peloponnesian War by Kings and Generals. Let's see what... Last time Persia joined, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's something else. But yeah, it's still Athens is putting on victories after victories. Like, my goodness, the Athenians are just a force to be reckoned with now. So even after the Sicilian campaign, they're still super powerful. Like, Sparta, like, I feel like Sparta has been on the back foot this entire war. Like, I don't know, just, is it me, or like, I don't know, like, it's a bit different for me now, because like I said, I used to watch series all in one go. Now that I'm not doing that, like, saving every other, like, recording only one video a day, there are some details I do forget about and miss. But it just feels to me that Athens has kind of been the dominant force in this entire war. Like, they are, like, usually the ones with the upper hands are dictating the flow of things, and the more aggressive of the two, you know what I mean? I don't know. But we're gonna have to see now. Sparta's really gonna have to step it up. Like, this is, like, Athens is much weaker than before. Like, Sparta needs to really capitalize and, like, get some W's, you know?
In a resurgent democracy, the old factional actors were at it again, including Alcibiades. Seen as a traitor by many, he was eager to regain the power and favour he had once held in the city through military successes. Militarily, Athens concentrated its efforts on the Hellespont, where they were trying to assume complete control of the region and push out Spartan and Persian influence. In 410 BCE, they built their navy again and began preparing for war in those narrow straits. Meanwhile, Sparta tried to break through to allied cities like Chalcedon, but Athenian patrols destroyed these expeditions. Athens' vice over the Hellespont was secured when they entered into diplomatic negotiations with Sparta's ally, the Shahanshah of the Achaemenids, and managed to secure a deal with Pharnabazos to maintain control of Chalcedon. Things were not looking good for Sparta, but as fortune would have it, court intrigue in Persia would soon turn the tides back in their favour. Two Achaemenid princes, Arsaces, the oldest, and Cyrus, the second-born, were engaged in a battle for the throne, with the queen mother Parysatis favouring the latter.
I do know of Cyrus the Great, though I know there were more than one Cyruses, so I'm gonna refrain from just saying that, but you know what I mean. Certain Greek and 10,000 of his best friends will attempt to help Cyrus. Our next series will tell their story and if they were successful.
Cyrus had the odds stacked against him, for multiple other relatives and powerful satraps, including our old friend Tissaphernes, were all against him, as they all preferred Arsaces as ruler. Nevertheless, with the help of his mother, Cyrus outmaneuvered them all, then sought to secure his position by gaining a secure alliance with Sparta. It is here, in 407 BCE, where our well-acquainted Spartan Mothax Lysander entered the Aegean as a navarch once more. Lysander had taken over from the now-dead Mindarus and was keen to assert Sparta's interests in the Aegean. Athens was doing very well in the region, so a tightening of Perso-Spartan friendship was in order. Lysander and Cyrus subsequently met in Sardis and agreed to work together against Athens in Asia Minor. This provides an intriguing insight into the geopolitics of this phase of the war. While both Sparta and Persia had a common enemy, their alliance was not guaranteed due to different schools of thought in their political arenas. Many Spartans feared that their role as protectors of Hellas would be compromised if they became dependent on Persia and had to give up influence in Ionia. We have no sources from the Persian side, but it is possible they feared Sparta replacing Athens as a rival in the region. Sparta used Persian funds to increase the pay of their rowers, and then built up 20 triremes at Ephesus.
Ephesus is the site of the Artemision, a large temple to Artemis, with a pre-Hellenic or original cult there previously. It was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Oh, wow.
increasing its 70-strong fleet to 90. In response, Alcibiades forced Lysander's hand and took an Athenian fleet to Notium. Lysander did not take the bait, biding his time. After a while, Alcibiades left his main fleet to tour nearby Athenian garrisons, bestowing command of his ships on his second mate, Antiochos. Antiochos was given orders not to fight Lysander. However, being a typical Athenian, Antiochos ignored the orders and began a naval attack on the Spartans anyway. Here, our principal primary sources of Diodorus and Xenophon diverge in their accounting of events.
Okay, so how's this gonna go? Either he's just messed up big time right now, or he's somehow going to actually pull off a win. I don't know, like I said, after last video, I was so convinced the Athenians were beat, but, you know, they recovered beautifully last video, so I'm like, a part of me wants to be like, yeah, he's about to lose, what a hot-headed idiot, but I'm like, he might just pull off a victory for all I know, and just might prove me wrong, so I don't know, the Athenians are a beast. I guess this all falls on Lysander, huh? And if he even gives a battle or not.
Diodorus says Antiochos took 10 ships straight to Ephesos, causing Lysander to take out his force, one-shot KO Antiochos' ship, and then begin a chase of screaming Athenian sailors back to Notium.
Okay, so, bad move. Obviously, not following the orders was a bad idea, but now it depends if these ships help or drive them off.
Xenophon says Antiochos only brought 2 ships to the harbour and sailed to the Spartans. Lysander only sent a few ships at first, but apparently Athens sent more ships, but the reinforcements only caused the Spartan fleet to be unleashed. In any case, the Spartans crushed Antiochos' advance force, then sailed onwards to Notium. The Athenians in Notium dashed to their ships, sailed out, and organised themselves in many small contingents to do battle. Ultimately, they were destroyed by Sparta's numerical superiority, with 15 of the 22 ships being sunk. A triumphant Lysander returned to Ephesos.
Wow, that's a pretty decisive defeat on the Athenians. Again, that hot-headed guy. Yeah, like, that was dumb. Obviously, Al knew what he was talking about in regards to, don't give them a fight. Then that guy just was like, no, I'll go, and then now he got wrecked. And the Athenians have been given a decisive blow on the sea, where they're supposed to have the superiority, so... Yeesh. Oh boy, how is this gonna turn the tide of war, though?
Alcibiades returned in utter humiliation to Samos, where the army had retreated. In a last bid to save his reputation, Alcibiades took his entire fleet to Ephesos to offer battle. Still, Lysander remained barricaded and refused to engage, knowing he would be disadvantaged if he did so. Humiliated, the Athenians returned to Samos. This was the end of Alcibiades' political career. After the defeat of his navy, the Athenian people turned against him, and he went into self-exile in Thrace. He would unsuccessfully try to re-enter politics for the remainder of his life, until he passed away in 404 BCE. We are not...
What an interesting story Al had. You know what I mean? Like, he did so much in this series, and kind of became, like, probably one of the bigger players of the entire war, with his jumping around from Sparta to Persia to Athens, and then back to Athens, and then, like, leading, like, he was all over the place, but he was beyond interesting. He's probably the figure I find most interesting of this entire war. And it's a little sad he went out like that. I mean, he restored the democracy stance of Athens, but yeah, unfortunately he went out, and that's mainly because of mismanagement. This was all a bad effect, right? Like, who he put in charge as second mate kind of led to his own defeat, right? So yeah, that's just called bad management and putting your faith in a bad, subordinate. So yeah, rip Al. What an interesting character in history.
Not sure how this happened, but Plutarch claims it happened when he went to the Persian court to gain favour for Athens against Sparta. However, his nemesis Lysander had already sent envoys to Pharnabazus to arrange for assassins to take Alcibiades out. The assassins set Alcibiades' house on fire, and Alcibiades decided to have his final stand. He rushed out of the burning structure and was killed in the ensuing knife brawl. Thus ends the story of the statesman, traitor, general, and turncoat who decided to meet his end with honor.
Dang. I'm gonna miss him, Al. Even though I can't even say his name correctly, I just keep calling him Al. I know it might annoy some of you, I apologize, but trust me, this is better than hearing me ruin his name every time I try. But, like, yeah, I'm gonna kind of miss him. He was kind of an interesting figure in this whole thing. But that's just a funny way to go, in a sense. I mean, not funny, but, like, it's just, the idea is like, well, you know what, my house is on fire, let me go out fighting, pulls out a knife and just starts brawling. I don't know. It's kind of cool, I think. Not a bad way to go, you know?
In 406 BCE, Lysander was relieved of his post. The Navarch who succeeded him in the admiralty, Callicratidas, continued trying to break through to the Athenian sphere of influence. This meant going around the Ionian coast to try and take some cities in that region from Athens. Callicratidas was going to face an Athenian admiral named Conon, and he tried to make sure he had a numerical advantage by rallying 140 ships to his side. The fleet began sailing across the coast and engaging in minor battles. The first was the Siege of Delphinium in 406 BCE. Delphinium was an Athenian base on Chios, an island that had been one of the first fortresses to rebel against Athens after the Syracuse debacle. Despite Athens' inability to retake Chios, they managed to begin a blockade of the island using the fortress and ensured some minimal control in the region. Outside Delphinium was a 500-strong Athenian garrison, trying to take over a hostile island who now faced an entire Peloponnesian fleet. This gulf in manpower must have become obvious to them as soon as they saw the fleet appear, so before the fight began, they raised the white flag of surrender. The Spartans let them go and join the other Athenian forces, and then they proceeded to level the fortress to the ground. Following this success, Callicratidas continued to a second Athenian stronghold at Methymne on the island of Lesbos, which had a far larger garrison. Sparta sent out waves of attackers to breach this bastion, all of whom were repulsed. Nevertheless, Callicratidas eventually broke inside some of the walls, presumably the outer ones. Here we see divergences amongst the post-Thucydidean historiographical landscape. According to Diodorus Sikellos, the local Methymnians wished to stop the fighting. As such, they betrayed the city to the Spartans by letting them inside the walls. Xenophon doesn't mention any such betrayal, and merely describes an eventual victorious assault. The Peloponnesian fleet then moved on and almost intercepted the Athenian navy. Conon, the Athenian commander, took his ships and fled, though many Athenian vessels were captured. Conon was in the region to help the Methymnians, but had stayed in Hecatonesia, to the south of Adramyttium to Lesbos' east.
Hecatonesia means 100 islands and is small group of islands in the region. It is similar to, oh yeah, the Hecatocrates? Yeah, I know that, about the 100 armed giants. They also have a lot of heads, right? Like, I know about the arms. I forgot if it was the heads too or not. But yeah, I've heard of it, for sure. That is so interesting. I'm like learning about the geography of Greece, which I just find probably the most interesting of all geographies that I've ever looked at. Just like all the various islands, their identities and culture, and you know how this war, like, it's interesting in in terms of geography. This war is very interesting, you know, with all the naval necessity needed, and yeah, overall, just, I don't know, like, I've really loved this, you know. I'm going to Greece in May, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing it, you know, and like being in such a like I said, I'm obsessed with the Greeks. At the moment, I've been obsessed with the Greeks since last year, and I've always kind of had a weird obsession with Greek culture and history. I mean, you know, it's been reborn. It was reborn last year, and it's carrying on through this year. But I don't know, I just find it all so fascinating. And it's just gonna be almost humbling because, you know, to be in a place where so much happened in history, you know, the wars fought in Greece, you know, between all the various people, the Greeks, the Persians, the Romans. I don't know, it's like almost humbling to me to be like, wow, all the history that took place here, and I'll be stepping foot there. You know what I mean? It's like I'm humbled by the idea. Like, it's an honor for me. But yeah, let's get back to the video. I'm sorry.
East after hearing of the city's fall. The Peloponnesians tried to cut them off from their base at Samos. At dawn, the Athenians and Spartans met at sea, and Conon fled towards Mytilene. Callicratidas chased after him and entered the harbour of the city, which was a massive gulf region. A battle ensued, and 30 ships were destroyed on the Athenian side, although the crews mostly survived. Callicratidas surrounded the city and began a long siege.
Callicratidas? Why can't I say this man's name? Yeah, so I'm just gonna call him Cal. I'm so sorry. I know, like I said, I've always been bad at pronunciation, but with some of these Greek names, I'm struggling more than other videos. So I'm just gonna call him Cal for short. And by the way, Cal is doing what the heck? This guy came out of nowhere, and now like he's turning the tide for Sparta almost single-handedly. Notice the moment Al went, Cal showed up and proceeded to turn the tides. Holy crap. Okay, it seems like Calcrides? Again, I'm just gonna call him Cal. It seems like Cal is gonna be the next big player for the Spartan / Peloponnesian side. Alright, I'm gonna watch your career with great interest, Cal. Let's see if I'm right about you and you end up becoming a big time player now.
Our two historians diverge in their accounts yet again. Xenophon describes a lack of food, which caused the city to face starvation. He claims that Conon tried to send a message for help to Athens with 2 of his ships. One ship was captured, while the other reached the Hellespont and from there broke through to Athens. Diodorus Siculus describes things differently, claiming that Conon initiated the first battle, and that the second harbour battle was done after the siege began. 10 ships worked their way from Samos to Athens, but Callicratidas intercepted and captured them. As Athens heard of the siege in Mytilene, its citizens immediately began to raise a new fleet from across their entire empire.
The name Aegean is actually of Athenian mythical origins. After Aegeus, the mortal father of Theseus, he had asked his son to put white oh yeah, I know this. Yeah, he's like, hey, when you come back, you know, essentially the sails. Theseus forgets to change the sails, and his dad thinks he's dead, and so he, like, kills himself, throws himself off. At least that's one version of the myths I've heard. I know there are multiple versions of every Greek myth, so, you know. But that's the one I've always heard. Okay, sorry. We'll put white sails if he survived his encounter with the Minotaur in Crete. The young hero forgot, and the grieving father fell to his death in the sea. Yeah, the version I heard is he threw himself, he commits suicide, but again, with Greek mythology, there's differences, which I find fascinating. There's no, like, you know, canon or straight up canon definitive story in a lot of Greek myths. Like, some myths can be different in different parts, so I don't know. I find that interesting, you know. Giving it its name. Interestingly, Theseus had a divine father, Poseidon, Olympian god of the seas, yes. Also, I'm pretty sure Theseus founded Athens. I'm pretty sure it was Theseus who did that. Or at least, you know, in mythology. I mean, Cadmus founded Thebes, and, you know. So, I don't know. I find that all interesting.
A multitude of ships from Athens, their Samian sidekicks, and other Aegean islands were assembled and sent forth from Samos. Thus began the epic struggle that was the 406 BCE Battle of Ionusae. Athens sent no less than 8 of their finest generals to the fight: Aristocrates, Aristogenes, Diomedon, Erycinides, Lysias, Pericles the Younger, the son of Pericles and Aspasia, Protomachus, and Thrasyllus.
Holy crap. Athens is doubling down. They're like, we're sending in the best. We're sending in the dream team. This is a crisis. We must fix this, you know? I'm a bit worried, though. With that many generals, isn't that like the idea of too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Like, won't they just start butting heads? I don't know. I'm probably completely wrong about that. Either way, I get it, but like, you can see a sort of desperation in this move, right? Like, it comes across like, oh no, something bad's happened, we're gonna have to rally our full strength. But it's also, when moves like these, it's dangerous, because if they get beat, that would be a crushing blow, right? If they lose. The tide's gonna have to turn completely against Athens eventually. I'm wondering if this is finally gonna be the moment where Athens is kind of like really beat like to a point where it's like, oh crap, you can see them already losing, you know? I don't know, Cal has proven to be quite a force, but if he can overcome this, he might just be one of the biggest, most important players of the entire war, even if he fights them.
Athens also had 70 ships under Conon in the region, and with their reinforcements, had a tally of 155 ships. Sparta had 140 ships there already present. Callicratidas had grown increasingly confident, and thus took 120 ships to come along to face the Athenian combatants. The rest of the ships stayed at Mytilene. The two armies were fated to meet as the Greek goddess of dawn, Eos, set her chariot forth for the new day after a thunderstorm the Greeks could only believe Zeus himself had sent. The western shores of the Ionusae Islands were witness to the greatest naval battle of the Peloponnesian War. The Athenian fleet arranged itself into 2 lines. The far left flank included Aristocrates with 15 ships, while Pericles the Younger was right behind him. To their right was Diomedon with 15 ships, and Erycinides behind him. The centre included Athens' loyal Aegean allies, with Athenian taxiarchs and navarchs in command of the fleet. Further right was Protomachus with Lysias behind him with 15 ships each. The fringe right flank included Thrasyllus, who commanded the front line, and Aristogenes the rear. The Athenian left wing was next to the open sea, while the right was towards the shore. The allies were right in the centre of the line, right in front of the Ionusae Islands.
Okay, this positioning is a bit unique. Obviously, the Spartans are just /Peloponnesians are just straight line, but the Athenians seem to be like dispersed around the place. So like, I'm wondering, like, it depends who attacks first, right? Like, if they both go at the same time or whatnot, there might be some damage, because it seems like while the Spartans could potentially move at the same wavelength, you know? Like, it seems like these ships might have risk facing them first. I don't know how this is gonna go. I don't know crap about this battle, guys. Like, I'm just, like, thinking. Also, them being closer to the shore, I'm wondering if, like... Oh, this is a unique starting point for the Athenians, I feel. I'm not sure if it's good or not at the moment. A part of me is like, maybe not, but I don't know. I don't know.
This was an ingenious strategic move, as the Spartans had to be close to not fall into the open sea, while the island at their back meant that any form of sneak attack could not surround Athens. Callicratidas responded by splitting his fleet, with him taking up the right flank and his Boeotian allies under Thrasondus the Theban taking up the left flank. The Spartan admiral...
Okay, so I had failed to understand. Obviously, forgive me for my ignorance. Like I said, I don't know about this battle, and my knowledge of the war other than Athens wins is like lacking. So this is all learning for me. Okay, so now that he explained it to me, okay, I can see the use in terms of, you know, not being surrounded. I feel like that's the biggest one. You can't be enveloped, so that's pretty good. Though Callicrates, um, seems to realize that too is now splitting his force. How's this gonna go? I don't know how this is gonna go. Like, a part of me wants to be like, well, you know, I feel like I've done this several times in the series. I'm like, they're gonna win, and then they don't win. I'm like, dang it, you know. So I'm like, I don't know, man. But I'm just like wondering, like, if this is the big moment where either Sparta finally gets the upper hand, because if the Athenians win, I just don't know how Sparta can rebound. You know what I mean? Like, again, I have the hindsight of knowing Sparta wins the war. I just don't know the steps how they got there. So far, they've been on the back foot and seem to always be at the disadvantage towards the Athenians. I feel like it almost has to culminate, right, to like a decisive naval battle. And if the Spartans win, then that's the needle that breaks the camel's back, you know what I mean? But then again, I don't know. Like, for all I know, the Athenians are about to wreck Sparta right now. And then I'm like, how will Sparta rebound from then on? A part of me really loves not knowing what the heck's gonna happen. Like, there actually is something like, kind of fun, because I just get to speculate, and, like, my head's turning, like, how? You know, you know what I mean? I don't know. Alright, let's let him finish explaining. I'm so sorry.
Peril was outnumbered this time, and felt Sparta was growing increasingly dependent on Persia. Thus, he decided to initiate the fight in order to gain a short-term victory that would gain the advantage without Persian help, and the ships clashed on the shores of Ionusae. The ships rammed into each other, while the waves of Poseidon clashed and churned against the island's shores. While the waves of Poseidon clashed of Ionusae.
Sorry, I just need to get that again. Okay, so Callicrates seems to, on his left, I guess you can call this the left, seems to initiate the conflict on this side, on the Athenians' right. Okay.
The ships rammed into each other, while the waves of Poseidon clashed and churned against the island's shores. The Athenians opened up their ships as they advanced, taking full control of the naval landscape, and with their rear covering any gaps to stop the Spartans from passing between and surrounding them. Despite the numerical advantage, it was not an easy victory for the Athenians, as both of our sources mention that the battle lasted for a very long time. Having made his choice, Callicratidas met his end on that fateful day, though our sources differ on how this happened.
Dang, man. This is the part about real history that I really love. Like, someone shows up and they seem like they're gonna be such a big player, but then they just die, which goes to show no one has plot armor, which kind of makes us so much more, like, shocking, you know what I mean? I feel like when you're reading a book or watching a movie, you can tell when a character is important and when they're gonna continue to serve the plot for a long time. Real life, watching these videos is like, I kind of operate with that logic. I'm like, yeah, this person seems really important. They're getting things done. And then they just die. And, like, that goes to show you how real life, there ain't plot armor for people. You know, anyone can go any minute, which makes it more shocking. But, Callicratidas, GG. I thought he was going to be a big player, but turns out not. Apparently the Athenians win this. I'm like, but how are Spartans gonna rebound? They've lost so much, like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you rebound, Sparta? I'm just trying to get the moment. I'm sorry if I'm bugging you with this whole, when's the moment the tables turn? It's just like, the reason I keep saying that is because Athens, like I keep saying, is just dominating the war. Even after the Sicilian campaign, which I thought would be the decisive turning point, they rebound, you know? The chaos that Cal's causing, they rebound, like, you know what I mean? I'm just like, the Athenians keep rebounding from moments, I think, where they would lose, but nah. Persia joins, Athens is rebounding. You know what I mean? Like, I'm amazed by Athens. I'm almost shocked. How did they not win the war? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. This is all interesting.
We know that he took his ship and rammed into the Athenians. According to Xenophon, he fell off the ship during the ramming and died, while Diodorus claims he got entangled with the ships of Pericles the Younger and fell while fighting. Whatever the case, Callicratidas died fighting his enemies for the glory of his alliance. It had been said that before the battle, his allies told him that it would be difficult for them to win, so they had to forestall the fight. He is thought to have replied like King Leonidas or Hector of the Trojans by saying, "If I die in combat, Sparta will suffer no ill. If I surrender, Sparta will endure great shame." Eventually, one of the Spartan flanks also broke, signalling the beginning of the end, though both our main sources disagree on whether it was the right or left flank. The Peloponnesians fled to Chios, leaving the Athenians behind. 70 ships of Sparta were destroyed, while only 25 ships were destroyed on the Athenian side. This was a fight won by a desperate Athenian state. It is here that we see what happened to Conon, who was still under blockade. The generals decided to split their army to go to Mytilene to help him escape the blockade he was in, with 2/3 going to help and 1/3 staying behind to save their comrades at sea. 2 triarchs, Thrasybulus and Theramenes, were tasked with trying to save the remaining sailors, while the other navarchs went to pursue the Spartans. Eteonicus, the Peloponnesian commander at Mytilene, evacuated his army and his fleet, allowing Conon to emerge from the blockaded city and link up with the main Athenian fleet. Due to the split in naval forces and a massive storm which constrained the movements of ships, neither enough wounded were saved nor the dead collected. Thus, when news reached Athens, they were as bittersweet as the shade of Odysseus' mother when they met in the gates of Hades. The Athenians were angry. The generals knew this. As they watched the sunset at Ianousae, the Athenian debates would commence once more. The debate in the aftermath of the battle was very heated. The generals believed Theramenes to be at fault for not saving the drowned sailors, while Theramenes thought the generals had been too long in pursuing the Spartans. The former believed Theramenes was trash-talking them, a common sight in Athenian politics. As such, they sent a letter mentioning the blame was due to the storm. The Athenians were angry, so the generals thought Theramenes had begun his own campaign against them, due to people angrily blaming them for the deaths of the men. As such, they sent another letter discussing how the captains had been given the order to collect the dead, implicitly blaming them for the tragedy and letting themselves off the hook. Theramenes and Thrasybulus were very influential in ancient Athens, as well as being efficient politicians and speakers. As such, they began to lobby in the Agora, claiming that they were given an impossible order to fulfill. Diodorus tells us that making these two as enemies doomed the generals. Aracinides was imprisoned, while 2 others, Aristogenes and Protomachos, felt that it would be a biased trial against them and had deserted before arriving. This made the situation for the remaining generals even more precarious, as a perception of guilt was sown among the Athenians. There was a heated debate, with many discussing the pros and cons of their guilt. The trial's emotional high stakes were harrowing, and thus the trial was hasty, and without the usual recourse to the law that Athens was known for. As such, the 6 remaining generals and many of their inferior officers were found guilty and executed. Many Athenians later realized their erroneous procedures and the cruelty of the punishment they inflicted upon the generals, and came to regret it. Sparta also offered peace.
Yeah, I imagine they would. I mean, even then, you still need your generals. I mean, it's one thing maybe to, like... I definitely get what's going on, for sure, in terms of, like, why the people would be, like, so, like, you know, up in arms, but I'm like, you kind of need your generals in this war. Maybe if you want to, like hold it off till after you've won the war. I mean, killing your own generals while the war doesn't seem to even be coming to a close seems a bit wild to me. You know, at most, if you want to really bad, I guess demote them, I guess, at most, but I don't know. I feel like that's... Again, I personally wouldn't kill the generals, but, like, I don't know.
on the status quo's terms, knowing full well that Lysander, who was very powerful and eager to regain command, and was both bold and without moral qualms, was bound to try to regain power. Athens ended up refusing, as many politicians, including a man called Cleophon, thought that they could win complete supremacy over the Aegean. This was when the three fates decided the fate of the war. Lysander was bound to return, and Sparta was still in an alliance with Persia. As such, the war was bound to continue. We are approaching the war's final 2 years, which will be decisive in their geopolitical effects upon Hellas. The two alliances will settle their scores on multiple fronts, on land and sea. In addition, the Athenians will finally have to face the Spartans on their soil and defend their homes as they once did against the Persians. The clashes will be mighty, and the stakes will be high, and only the Olympians know who will go to Elysium and who to Tartarus.
Okay, man. Like, I know, like, still Athens hasn't been in a rough spot there, but even then, it seems like Sparta's the one taking the more losses. I just don't know how Sparta comes out on top of this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the moment? I guess we're gonna have to find out tomorrow, huh? Damn, we're gonna have to wait till tomorrow. Like I said, I've refrained from recording all at once because I feel like I'll have more energy for every individual video I put up from now on by only recording once a day. So, but I guess it builds anticipation, because now for the rest of today, I'm going to be like, man, I can't wait till tomorrow to find out how Sparta wins the war. Like, you know, I don't know, I guess it's exciting, though I will admit, there is a restlessness to me now, so, oh well, I'm just going to have to do it. So I guess I'll see you guys tomorrow when we just get it done. Till then, bye everyone.